I didn't had thought I did all the answers to all the questions I had during my period. So afterwards, when I worked already at the university, I decided to go back to all the board members and directors I worked with because I had some typical questions in my mind, and I start interviewing them. I wanted to know actually what is good governance in the context of my organization. What are good decision-making processes? So I went back to all those professionals and started interviewing them. And when I interviewing them, I combined it with my own experiences and said to myself, maybe it's interesting to write a book. So I wrote a book. You see it on the left. It's called in Dutch, De Steen der Wijze. It's about a true search for the answers for good governance. The Philosopher's Stone, it's called in English, is not translated in English yet, but maybe there are some people who like to read in Dutch. Feel free. You can get one copy of me for free. I sent you the PDF. So I did this research on my own into the context of me as a corporate secretary over those 20 years, where marvelous things happened, mergers, acquisitions, but also terrible things happened, fraud at the boards, bankruptcy, etc., financial crisis. So after I left, I had these critical questions in my mind. I call them my burning questions. The burning questions actually of what is good governance? What is it? And how can we or the board optimize their decision-making processes so they can take and make the good decision and being transparent about it? And the last question was more a personal question. How can I create as a corporate secretary more impact, more value for my board? So these burning questions, I asked them to these board members, and they gave me all kind of answers. Suppose you're sitting on a desk, written all those interviews, and I was sitting there, oh, what happened? Oh, how can I give the answer to this question, what is good governance? And I was searching and watching and reading and writing, and then I found out, actually, due to all these interviews and my own experience, I found out during the time I was working in the board as a corporate secretary during the period like from 2000 up to 2015, 2016, there has been 3 phases of governance. And I call it my governance framework. And hopefully, maybe you recognize it because it's based on my own experiences, but also I think recognizable for companies in general. So in the year 2000, when I started as a corporate secretary, governance was hardly unknown in my company. Yeah, there was a director, there was a CEO, but there wasn't even a supervisory board. So the first period, actually from the time 2000 up till 2014, the first period, dominantly the board was busy with regulation, formalizations. I was the board assistant. I had to structure all the events, all the agendas, all the notes. It was actually, yeah, it was the bottom has to be right, the pizza bottom. The foundation has to be good. So you can be very helpful. Also, my role as a board assistant was very helpful to keep things solid. It was regulation and formalization. But during the time of the financial crisis in Europe, 2014 to 2015, my board was actually asking me different kind of questions. We had many risks, and so they were asking, well, please, Ido, can you help me with this question or that question? So I found out that I had to reinvent actually my role as a corporate secretary. Next to being a good board assistant, I had to reinvent some governance procedures. I had to reinvent the role of the corporate secretary. So the focus in the period from 2014 up till I think 2020 is more and more being compliant. We had to look into in control statements, risk procedures, etc., etc. Dus next to being a board assistant, the focus of me as a board and corporate secretary shifted towards a new role. It's a kind of redesigning the role of the corporate secretary. The next stage, last stage we're now in, it's actually 2020, also due to the pandemic, COVID, but also, there's a distrust in companies, in governance, in politics, etc., etc. The focus shifted the last term not only on the procedures, but also to the behavior of the board members itself. It's about good behavior, taking the good decision, being transparent about it. So during my investigation, I saw these three phases of governance. I call it governance framework. And the first I want to mention is the first phase about regulation and formalization. I was very inspired at that time by a book. It's written by Patrick Dunn. I want to advise it to all of you. Please, if you want any understanding about the role of the corporate secretary, the classical role, please read this book, Patrick Dunn. It's written 25 years ago. It's called Running Board Meetings. And it's all kind of techniques about setting the agenda, making the notes, etc., etc. It was for me a very helpful book at that time to make a very valuable contribution for the boards. But as I told you, in 2014, 2015, my board was starting to ask me different questions. Okay, you're doing your job well, but now we're facing some complex problems. We need other insights, other perspectives on the board table. Please help us, Edo. And I found out that in reinventing my role, I really had to reinvent my role, not on a classical way, but on a new way. I had to rethink what I did for the board and how I could contribute to them even more by giving them valuable information. I found a word and it's called board innovation. I had to be, next to the classical board assistant, more a board innovator. And what is a board innovator? Now, the term board innovation for me refers to the unconventional use of ICT and other tools to help the board in solving their everyday problems in a unique way, so they can have this feeling of magical moments in their board meetings that really helps them and support their decision-making processes. This is a kind of an unconventional way in helping them to create what I call magical moments. And now maybe some of your people think, Edo, what do you mean by magical moments? And what do you mean by your new role? Now, at the time, I was very inspired by this Nobel Prize winner. I think probably you know him, is Daniel Kahneman. Daniel Kahneman, when I did some research on his work, he put a light on in me. He gave me this inspiration because Daniel Kahneman investigated already, that there is actually a difference between your experience self and your memory to the experience self, the remembering self. And Daniel Kahneman stated, and he's a Nobel Prize winner, for example, by this project, what he did, he put two patients on a tube and injected them with pain. And here you can see the results, patient A and patient B. And after 2 weeks, he asked the two patients to report the intense and amount of pain they felt during the treatment. So you can see patient A and patient B had the same amount of pain they had to face, because it's up to 8. So actually the experience of pain is the same during this treatment. But after 2 weeks, he went back to this patient and asked the same question, what both patients remembered of this pain experience. And then you see a difference, because patient B, who had more pain experience, the remembrance of him is more positive because the pain reduces for him. So this was for him for Daniel Kahneman a statement that there is a difference in all things that we do between your experiencing self and your remembering to this experiencing. And most of the time we all mess it up. And when I read this research, I was thinking, whoa, this is interesting, because in the classical way as a board assistant, I was always busy with doing things for my board in the experiencing way. I tried to give the board members the best possible experience by giving them the right information, the right content at the right time, so they can have a board meeting, they can make the decisions. I never thought about how can I influence maybe the memory to this experience. So yeah, it really got inspired by Daniel Kahneman. But there were also other people that already were inspired by Daniel Kahneman. And that is my second learning point. I had an open mind at that time. I was thinking, well, this is a question in my mind right at this time. But it can't be that the answer is already out there in a different context, in a different industry. So I found out that many answers to our problems are already, the answers are already there. You have to be an open mind, or get an open mind and find out. And it's a term for that. It is called cross-industry innovation. In other industries, maybe they can be helpful in finding solutions to your problems. And yeah, when Daniel Kahneman actually stated this phenomena of experiencing self and remembering selves, the marketeers already adopted this principle. They were thinking, whoa, that's interesting. When we want to see if we can influence a customer in buying my stuff, it's really about the experiencing of the buying. But if we can influence the remembering to this buying, whoa, that is very interesting. So the marketeers are always the first group of people and professionals who adapt this kind of principles. And they were taking this principle of Daniel Kahneman, and what they used is actually his theory. And the theory of Daniel Kahneman is called the peak end theory. So if you have something to do, a buying process or a governance process or whatever, it's all about actions you have to take. You have to see, and if you can get an experience, a good result by the things you're doing. But during this event, during these actions, during these board meetings, you can see if you can add extra moments. And Daniel Kahneman is calling them actually a peak end and touch points. So you can create a touch point, a positive one or a negative one, during the time you're doing things together. And a positive touch point can be very simple. I will give you some examples later on. But Daniel Kahneman already said, in all the things you do, please be sure that at the end of what you're doing, there's always a positive peak end. And the peak end has always to be positive, but the peak end is the most dominant influencer of the remembrance. So suppose you're going on a holiday, and you're going on a holiday for 2 weeks, and you have 13 days of rain, and the last day is sun, then Daniel Kahneman will state that the remembrance to this holiday will be positive, because at the end there's a positive peak end. It's not about the total experience. No, it's the remembering to the experience. And why is it so interesting? Because Daniel Kahneman said the remembrance is the best predictor to future actions. So suppose you're a marketeer and you can influence the remembrance, then you be sure that the people will come back. So there's a difference between the experiencing self and the remembering selves. And here you can see an example, and then we go to the governance context. In Holland, you have this famous shop IKEA. And that's one of the famous examples when I do training sessions with directors or corporate secretaries. I always ask them, okay, the marketeers adopted this principle of Daniel Kahneman and made customer journeys. And IKEA also made customer journeys, because you go into your car to the shop, you park your car. Ooh, first negative touch points. Oh, there's no space to park my car. But then you enter the shop and there's the first positive one, because maybe you're carrying your children with them and they're crying and they want to go to the shop. Please leave them behind in this playground so you can go into the shops. And there's a restaurant, another positive shop. But in the end, you have to pay for your stuff. Now that's, for most of us, a negative touch point, because you're also you spend too much money. But when you left the shop to IKEA, when you paid your stuff, when the buying experience is over, there's this tiny little shop. And I always ask my people in my training sessions, what do you remember of IKEA? And 99% of my people are telling me always, it's not about the stuff they bought. No, it's about this cheap ice cream and the cheap hot dog they are buying after they left the shop. And that is truly not something some funny people made up. No, that's the marketeers who are really to want to influence the memory to your buying experience. And when I heard this story in this marketing concept, I was thinking, holy shit, I have to make some governance journeys in my role as corporate secretary. In my classical role, I truly make, I was preparing boardroom meetings. I was helping them during the boardroom meetings, the normal procedures. But I have never thought about how can I influence actually the memory to this experience of good governance. Of course, I have to make the notes. Of course, I have to set the agenda. But how can I influence it? And it was very helpful me in the second role as board innovator to create actually these touch points. So I made some touch points, and I give you some example. Here you can see me during some board meetings. In the left, you see, for example, we did some board events, some board meetings, serious meetings about serious stuff. And I was trying to see, hey, how can I use music, a DJ, and contributing the memory into this meeting process? And it was really helpful. But sometimes there was very tension at the board, and I was, oh, stop. First listen to our DJ. Maybe he can help us with some song which can contribute to our decision-making process. And the board members, a bit of relaxing, bend backwards. It's okay, please, Edu, help. It can be helpful. 1 minute of rest. Yeah, it has nothing to do actually by the experience of good governance, but the memory to this experience were very positive, because at the end, the directors and board members were telling me, wow, there's a little bit of fun into this serious board meeting. So I was starting with music, and the bottom you see actually the setting of the simple setting of our board meeting, a chair and a table, but you can also see there are lights, because I was starting also by using and experimenting with lights into board meetings, because it's already known that if you want to promote some creative processes, you have to put yellow light into your room. If there is a serious subject, financial topic, please use blue light. So I was also using lights, environment, music, and I was always looking for a positive piquant at the end. So on the left, you see the attendance to these boardroom meetings. And when there was struggle, when there was fight, heavy debates, okay, that's in the room. But outside the room, there was also this kind of fade out, a light lunch, a little chat. And afterwards, the people and the board members were always telling me, Edo, it was a tough fight. It was a fair fight. It was a constructive meeting, but what's truly helpful was this positive end, this light lunch. And then we had to fade out, then we can relax, go into our cars to our next meeting. So I was really trying to think how I can create touch points into serious board meetings. And it was very helpful because it helped in creating what I called magical moments. And that was actually the first part. And I did actually a couple of maybe 20 to 30 board meetings in doing this and creating these magical moments. And it really was helpful in not only adding a memory to these boardroom meetings, but the board members itself found it very helpful and useful and valuable because they felt, well, it led to a more constructive boardroom meetings and better decision-making process. And again, of course, the first part is running board meetings. Yeah, everything has to be good and solid. The base has to be good. And then, in my opinion, you can shift to create extra value as what I called a board innovator. Yeah, but then you come into maybe 2020. It was at the end term of my work as a corporate secretary in this company. And yeah, there was a big distrust due to fraud at the board, a financial crisis, almost bankruptcy in my company. The audience has distrust, our stakeholders had distrust, and my board members were asking me questions. For Ido, yeah, it's nice that we have these nice boardroom meetings and also searching for magical moments, but we have to go back to the real base, and that is how can we create and make the best possible decisions for our stakeholders or for our audience. And that was the next phase, the last phase. And I was again thinking about my role as a corporate secretary. And again, I had to rethink about maybe I have to add another extra value for my board by making it possible that they can take and make the best decisions possible. And again, I was inspired by the marketeers. The term I had for it was binge governance. So in the final stage. But it's based on and inspired by a Dutch woman, and her name was Carlijn, or is Carlijn Posma. And I know her very well, and she's a marketeer. And she wrote a book, I think also, no, maybe 6-7 years ago, and it's called Binge Marketing. And why binge marketing? Now, it's based upon binge watching, because she was also a mother, and she was very intrigued by the phenomena that when she was watching Netflix series at home with her children, the children were actually connected to the series. They were attached to the series. They wanted to go to sleep because, they wanted to see the next episode of the series. They feel the true connection by the head characters. They want to see and watch. And she was thinking, oh, interesting. What are the secrets of Hollywood by getting us connected to our Netflix series? And why do I have so many problems to get my audience connected to the brand of my company? And she was searching actually also for a kind of philosopher's stones. What are the secret ingredients of the producers of Hollywood in producing the Netflix series? And when I wrote the book, I was thinking, wow, what an interesting philosophy. How can I see if I can adapt those principles which worked for her in a marketing concept into a governance context? And for me, it's been calling binge governance. So the term binge governance refers again to a kind of unconventional use of multiple communication channel strategies to present actually your board information, or what I called your governance content as a rock solid television series. So you don't have to think, oh, I have to produce one boardroom meeting. No, think of it as a series of boardroom meetings during a year, and every meeting in those series has to be unique in text, image, and sound, and it's an episode of the same series. And the use and it can be very useful to get your board addicted to their content, so they can make and want to see the next episode, want to see the next board meeting. And it can be very helpful to get the board members addicted to the content, because there is so many information, and so they can take and make the best decisions possible. So again, cross-industry innovation. It has to be found out already in marketing, and I adapted some of the principles, and it was very easy for me to see, oh, how can I use those ingredients into a governance context? And I will show you some of those examples. Because the first one is when I look back over those 15 years in general, and I asked this question many times to the professionals or the corporate secretaries I worked with, and I asked them the question, please tell me, what is dominantly the channel strategy, or the way in which the board information is presented to your board members? And I think dominantly, I don't know, maybe I think 60 to 70, up to 80% people were telling me, Edo, when I'm preparing boardroom meetings, it's always about presenting them written content, the notes, the papers, etc. They have to read and then discuss about what they read. So there is actually, in communication terms, a single channel strategy. So we use dominantly, I think still, paperwork. It's presented on your laptop, but the base is written content. The new strategy, when you think about getting your board addicted, is maybe a multiple channel strategy. So rethink the processes and try to see, in preparing during and after boardroom meetings, not only written content, yeah, but you also can use short videos. You can also use live presentations. Yeah, there are all kinds of means how you can present your governance content on the boardroom table or afterwards in writing the notes or making a video. So I think we're at the turning point already a couple of years ago in redesigning the content strategy from a single to a multiple channel strategy. But that are the means we use. And that is in the film, is that this is the film. But we have to rethink also the process in how can we create the most valuable governance content for our board members. And what I did, I sat at the table and I was thinking, okay, I have to think about the next episode of maybe 8 boardroom meetings for the upcoming years. So I said, okay, there are 8 boardroom meetings for my executive board. And I was thinking, okay, I have to think in television terms, what is the series? What does it look like? How many episodes? Maybe I can think about, okay, in January where you have the first meeting, there's also a meeting in August. Maybe I can give some flash forwards in January. So what we can deal in August. You can also use flashbacks. When you have a meeting in August, think back, what was it in January? So it helped me a lot by thinking, okay, it's not one solo board meeting. Think in series, the same as the Netflix series. And when I thought about series, then the next question which came up in my mind was, okay, now I have to think, how can I produce actually the right and good and solid governance content? And I got inspired by a television series which was famous at that time in Holland. It's called The World is Turning, De Wereld Draait Door. And here you see a snapshot. It was every day, every evening on our television. And you see Matthijs van Nieuwkerk, that's the host. You see a table, you see people sitting on the table. And every time we watch this popular television series, I was thinking, whoa, they have a proper good debate as this table. It's good, it's sound. Maybe this television series can give us the inspiration to create our governance content. So it was very helpful to see and watch this, actually television show in another context to, oh, and now can I not copy, no, adapt those principles into my own governance context as a corporate secretary. And the first question I had to answer was, actually, who are we as a governance brand? Because my company was Portaal, and we had a mission, and we had a vision. But actually, when I was asking the question, okay, do we had any good conversation with our board members about our governance brand and the core values? In film terms, it's actually the plot summary, the back end of your CD, these little storylines. It's the plot summary. It's the core values. Everything you produce comes from the plot summary. So we had to think, what are we as a governance brand? Is it about being transparent? It's about integrity, responsibility, whatever, I don't care. It was the first question we had to deal with our board members. So we stated our core values as a governance brand. The second question is, when you think about, yeah, it has to get your board addicted to the governance content, there's this truly question about, do we know our audience? Do I know my board members? Yeah, I see sitting there at the table. I know who they are. I can watch on LinkedIn, but do we really know what my audience, my board members, want to read, watch, and listen to? So what we did, and in marketing terms, it's very common, we started by making this little, actually, storylines about our board members. We wanted to see and hear from them. What are your touch points? What are your frustrations? What are your goals? What do you really like to see, read and watch? Yeah, it really was helpful to get a connection between the audience and actually the content you want to provide to your audience. And it was very simple. Have a cup of coffee with your board member and see them as your audience and try to see if you can get it out of them. That's actually a personal story of your audience. So on one hand, we have our plot summary. On the other hand, we get some, oh, okay, this is our audience. Now we can see how we can create the best possible content, the governance content, because they have to make and take the decisions. But no, stop. There's one more question to have to ask for yourself. If you see, for example, these Netflix series, you get not only addicted to the series, but also to the head character, the person who is telling the story. And the man or woman who has the head character, he is, I think, during all the series, he is dominant. The question is common in Netflix series, but I had never thought about the question in a governance tech with what are the main characters, who is telling the story actually in or at a boardroom table. Who are the main characters? And in a common way, when there's board information at the table, yeah, I think the CEO or our CEO would say, okay, I will give you some brief introduction to this subject and I will tell you the story. So it was dominantly the CEO. But we were thinking, oh, but actually, when we look into our organization, it's not the CEO, it's not the board members who are telling the story. That are not the main characters. It's our managers and the directors who are working with our people. So we were thinking the main characters who are telling the story and creating the story for our board members and our board meetings are the managers. And here you can see what we did. We tried to see them. On the left, you see all our managers. And we started by making videos about the discussions they had, the proposals they made. And it were kind of 1-minute videos. And these 1-minute videos were added to the governance content, the written content for the boardroom meetings. We also invited them. You see it on the right. There you can see a boardroom meeting with the man with the purple tie. That's our CEO. You see a staff member on the right. You see an independent director who's the host. But there are also managers surrounding the table. So we were always inviting the managers to come to these boardroom meetings, just watch and listen, and feel free to add a contribution to the board meeting. At the moment, if you're saying, okay, I want to contribute something which can be valuable for this boardroom process or this boardroom meeting, please feel free. So you see this yellow chair is always empty. So the managers are also part of telling the story for our board, so they can make and take the best possible decisions. Now, the fact that we opened the chair is based upon one of our core values, governance core values in this company, was take your responsibility. Don't be led by hierarchy. Feel free. So whatever people are sitting on the table, if you think you can add value to this discussion, take the chair and stand up and leave and watch if you don't. So we had this plot summary. We know the audience and we thought about, okay, but it's are the managers and the directors who has to tell the story for our board. They became the main characters. And as I told you, again, here is one of the meetings in this series. We started by making this table. And the table was surrounded by chairs because the table was the symbol of good and constructive conversations. And you can add the boardroom meeting and leave to the people. It was completely transparent, but normally there was a boardroom meeting and I was making the notes, and afterwards I was sending the notes to the people, the managers, etc. But we were thinking, now, come on, if you truly believe that you are transparent, invite those people to your boardroom meeting. So again, plot summary, transparency, that's one of the core values of our company. And actually in producing and generating the governance content, it created an atmosphere of openness and transparency. So decor, people, head characters, again, it was based upon De Wereld Draait Door, the world is turning, with an independent host, and here you can see it, the man with the microphone, who is directing actually the board meeting. And then we had to produce the boardroom information. And of course, I think still 30, 40, 50% of the board information, the governance information, was based upon written content. Investment proposals, notes, etc., strategy proposals. Also, the people and the board members had to read the governance content. But we found out that, that is an experience to good governance. It has to be solid. It has to be sound. Of course. But we were adding extra value in what we called hyper-personalization. We knew exactly pain points and positive points for the board members, what they really want to read, like, and listen to. So every time we created a piece of governance content, we were thinking, okay, what's the right message? What time had to be on the table? Do we know the audience right? Is it the right time? And do we have and choose the right channels? Not only written content, but maybe also videos or personal adding to the boardroom meetings. And I think that is key. It's not one solution. Be critical and creative to actually, in those series and these boardroom meetings, every time be as a kind of a board director, very creative in creating the right governance content. So that's key. King is video. That was for me really an eye-opener also 6 years ago when we started by adding 1-minute videos next to content, written content. The people and the audience and our board members really like this personal touch of this manager who was telling, oh, please, in 1 minute, oh, we had to face some difficulties. I did it that way, that blah, 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 blah. It was a contribution to actually a note. The combination of the note and the 1 minute video worked wonderfully well. So that is actually, King is for me, using and contribution of video or other means. Now, and was it helpful? Yes, it was really helpful, because I never would say that by using binge governance that it led to even better decision-making processes than by using a single-use strategy. But I always quote Daniel Kahneman. Daniel Kahneman said already, it's not only by creating experience of good governance, it's also about the memory to this experience. And I truly believe by creating these videos, after a couple of years, the boardroom members will remember, for example, this 1 minute video or the way in which you produce the boardroom meetings. This again, it can be very helpful in creating a memory to an experience. So then I created extra value for my board members. Now at the end, I will tell you, for me, it was also very helpful. I started my career as a minimal corporate secretary. I had to start in doing my job as a board assistant. And during those years, every time I found actually a new stage, 3 stages as in the governance. So the board assistant, then a board innovator, and then the next and last term, maybe now I can call it actually a corporate secretary, is kind of a showrunner of the board. In Netflix, the man or woman who is producing all those Netflix series is called the showrunner. He is the one who is giving guidance to the writing room and the plot summary. He is directing all the movies and all the characters. And again, I find out when we are making this boardroom series, it was fun to do. I had control. It gave me energy. So it was for me very helpful in reinventing my role as a corporate secretary, which is maybe more than a board assistant now, a showrunner of the board. And there are, I think, 4 actually skills, and it's not only to corporate secretaries, it's common known that these are the 4 needed skills for the 21st century. It's communication and collaboration. Okay. That's true. But I found out in this large stage, for me as a corporate secretary, as being a showrunner, I had to be very critical about how can I get the right piece of information on the boardroom table. And it's also a form of critical thinking. Be critical. The other thing is you have to be open-minded and creative. Please try to see, the answer is already out there. Cross-industry innovation, try to see if it can be helpful. So the combination of creativity and being critical or critical thinking was very helpful for me to getting confident and showing the board that there was some extra value for them to do their decision-making processes and all the board procedures they had to handle. So that is actually, in a nutshell, what I did as a corporate secretary and my actually vision on corporate governance and the role of the corporate secretary. Carolyn, over to you.
Thank you. I just absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. If you want to close or stop sharing your screen.
Oh yeah, one second, maybe. I've once, and then maybe some time left for questions. Audience, I've told Carolyn that in COVID time, I started by doing these online sessions, and for me, it's not about being a businessman. I do hope to give some inspiration to governance professionals. After COVID, I went to my beloved India and did a tour through India, and some professionals helped me. I did a cycling trip, and during the cycling trip, I give some training courses for professionals or students, whatever, and then we can go deep dive into this material. Yeah, it's actually for me, if the audience want to see or look or say, oh, it's interesting to make a kind of a tour de governance South Africa, please feel free to contact me afterwards, because then I need some assistance in organizing this trip in maybe 2025 or 2026. So that's actually not one announcement from my side. I shall stop my presentation right now. So
brilliant. I'm just going to change the view so we can see each other. Thank you so much. I think it's been overwhelming, the interest. I've been watching people on YouTube commenting. We had lots of people on YouTube watching. I had people commenting on LinkedIn as well. So a couple of screenshots of you presenting, but I think there's one comment here in the Q&A. If other people have comments, please either raise your hand or pop it in the Q&A. Got lots of thanks from everyone, but here's a comment, a question from Bunye Lee. Does corporate secretary have the right, or are they in a position to influence the board's decision-making process during the board meeting?
That's an interesting question, because I ended my story about critical thinking. In my opinion, and my CEO gave me this position in the board as a kind of an independent professional who stands above or in between the supervisory board and the executive board. So I had the position to be independent, and in my independent role, I had to be very cautious, of course, about how can I influence decision-making processes, because I was never in charge of the power. I only can contribute different perspectives to optimize the decision-making process. But for me, I have to say, my CEO put me in this position. So up front, he said, okay, our corporate secretary can help us in optimize those decision-making processes or board meetings. So, and I was really open about it. So dominantly, there was, for example, we found out that the financial perspective was always dominant. Okay, of course. But on the other hand, in my plot summary, when we were stating, yeah, but we are also for our customers, that is a very dominant perspective in our mission, then I was thinking, huh? The perspective is not in the boardroom table. How can I see if I can add also this perspective into a boardroom meeting? Again, it's not about me. It's about my mission, or our vision and mission and core values. So it's thinking about how can I integrate those core values in the things that we are doing. Again, it's critical thinking. It's not about being a funny guy. No. It has to add value. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that is influential in its own right.
Yeah. Of course. Eens. Yeah.
And also, I found it was something that I grappled with is when I'm training boards, and I'm not even in the boardroom. I come in and I leave. There is a significant amount of influence you can have, and as you say, those executives who provide the videos or the additional ways of consuming your content more easily, you would find that content sticks more than the content that is just a plain piece of paper that you're reading the 1,000-page pack in your board meeting. So there are ways of actually influencing, but at the end of the day, it really is the board members who must make the decisions.
Yeah, of course. I'm an assistant. I can be supportive. Yeah, of course. But it's Caroline, it's very, when you think of it, and that is by kind of critical thinking, suppose, and it happened in my company, and it takes a lot of courage also for me as a corporate secretary. We had a big office. Very big office. There was a very meeting room, and my CEO was a smart guy, and he put, when you entered the building, you have to go through a small gate for maybe 20 meters, and then you go right, and there was this boardroom meeting. What he did, he put an enormous picture of Churchill. So the people, enormous. So people were entering the building, go through this narrow gate, facing Churchill. Then they left to the boardroom meeting, and also serious guys. Afterwards, because this CEO was at the time, due to fraud, the board skipped, the remembrance of the boardroom members, Churchill, Churchill, Churchill. I was scared, even scared when I entered the building. So suppose when you have the courage to have a discussion in your board, maybe we should separate Churchill, because it influences. And so, of course, but everything is influencing each other. Yeah, it's a nice role. This is the most valuable role for a corporate secretary, is understanding these processes and trying to create a more objective, more perspectives, and only to contribute good decision-making process, of course. Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's a whole new skill set there for me, corporate secretary.
Yeah.
So here's one from Charissa. Any tips on how to improve online experience, positive touch point? Most of our meetings are now virtual. I think just from my side, before you even have your meeting, practice. Know how to share videos with the sound on, know how to share your screen. So just the basics, but that's just from an IT person.
Yeah, but that's a hygiene. That's hygiene factors. That's what I called hygiene factors.
Edo, yes.
Of course. But otherwise, you get negative touch points. But I have to say, it's more difficult also in my mind. By think of this positive touch points in an online context, because offline it's more easily. In my mind, because then you can think, oh, if we have a cold room, we have to heat up the room, because it gives them. Online, I think you can think of not only during, but you're also doing it, Caroline, but also when you think about, there's a time before a boardroom meeting, during a boardroom meeting, and after a boardroom meeting. After the boardroom meeting, there are lots of possibilities to try to see if you can capture the essence of the boardroom meeting indeed in creating, for example, a 1-minute video or whatever. In this video, my suggestion should be, then there has to be a personal touch. Not only, no, give it a personal touch by, now maybe let it a spoken word of one of the board members or the secretary, I don't care. Then you get a personal touch into some serious message. And that can be a positive. And otherwise, online, it's more difficult by thinking this touch points which can touch your heart, because online is also in your head, and it's more easily than,
Okay, one minute for the last question from Yolandi. How do you get the board members to buy into your governance recommendations?
Again, how do you
get your board members? So you're going to be recommending certain governance recommendations, and they're going to look at you as if you're a minute taker.
Yeah.
How do you actually get them to take up your recommendations?
What comes into my mind is, I think most of the board members see me as Edo, as a professional, and not by the things I'm doing, because that has to be good, but otherwise I won't be a corporate secretary. But I felt most of the time also that I'm not a board member in the sense I have the power, but I was one of the guys. I was part of. So maybe it's a process of being there a long time, because in the beginning, it was difficult for me. I had to get my position, but afterwards, and maybe it's also during the time of 10, 15 years, most of the board members were gone, new were coming, and I was already there. So you get a bit of mature, a bit of status. I think more
institutional knowledge.
I think.
But we've run out of time, I'm afraid. Edo, always, it's fabulous having you online, and thank you so much for spending your time with us. We are very excited about your cycle tour to South Africa, and we would love to host you and invite you. I'm in the Cape, so we will invite you to the wine farms for sure. And to see Table Mountain. But thank you very much to everybody for joining. It's been a lovely event, and the recording will be on the event page. We will also do a podcast of this event. It will also be transcribed, so you'll be able to download the transcription. You can ask Ido for his book in Dutch. There are many AI tools which are able to translate a PDF into your language of choice. But thank you very much again to everybody, and we're looking forward to seeing you online again. Next week, Tuesday, we have an event on ESG competence for boards. It's a program brought to us by Future Boards, and Mark Morley, our head of training and education, will be talking to Turid Solving. So that is a not to be missed event. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.